My brother is a drug addict, and he held my dad and I hostage saying he was going to kill us after he pulled out a gun. He fired it at the upper wall/ceiling at first to show us it was a real gun, and my mom was by the front door and able to run out. I wasn't 100% sure he noticed I was still inside, so I had run into the only room that locked, which was the bathroom, and hid behind the toilet. I eventually let him know my location by begging him to let us go, and we wouldn't call the police. He said he'd drag me out by the hair and shoot me first if my dad didn't give him any money. Eventually, my dad had convinced him there was money in the basement that my mom had hidden, and I ran out the front door. It was a single level house. My mom was on the phone with the police from a neighbor's house. What was scariest is that we were in a pretty rural area that had turkey hunting in the woods behind us. I heard a shot from the woods and assumed it was my brother murdering my dad. I had lived in a lot of fear up until that point anyway, because my brother was generally violent and scary. Took me a long time to be healthy again. I'm kind of a small person, but I still managed to lose a ton of weight and still haven't been able to sleep well. It's been almost 13 years. My parents wouldn't let me tell the truth on the police report, so I didn't write anything out or sign anything. My brother wonders now why I can't look at him, or why he couldn't hug me on my wedding day. Edit. Thanks everyone for the show of support. I'm sorry I didn't make it clear while I was writing this out, but my dad was not killed in this incident. Once it was just the two of them, and you could hear the sirens approaching. My dad was able to talk my brother out of it. Also, I'm a woman. A lot of people have assumed I'm a man. I know it's easy to blame my parents for enabling my brother's behavior, because I often do it myself, but this situation is very difficult for them too. We didn't have a lot growing up, but they loved us a crazy amount. They were the type of parents who would scrimp and save in order to take us to McDonald's for our birthdays, but not eat anything there themselves, because we couldn't afford it. They definitely spoiled us with their love, and they don't deserve the amount of suffering they've experienced trying to help my brother. They didn't realize that they were enabling him at the time, although they understand now, but their goal has always been to save him. Addiction is an incredibly difficult and complex issue. Posted this story already a long while back, but basically, I worked in a jail and a guy from a 1%er biker gang tried to pay $10,000 to have me killed because he somehow got the idea that I was the Fed who busted him and was merely pretending to be a jailer so I could spy on him. Don't do meth, kids. The guy was bragging about it, and one of the other inmates who I had saved from a heart attack with first aid didn't like that, so he beat the living shit out of the guy and then told me about it. Phone call recordings confirmed that he had promised the money to two guys if they shot me in the back of the head while escorting him to court and busted him out. Federal marshals rolled them up, and on his way to court I whispered to him, your friends won't be joining us. When we got to the planned ambush point, instead of a bond hearing he got charged for trying to have me murdered and organizing an escape. A little bit of background. Here we use Telegram to buy drugs. We have this big group with lots of dealers. Very sorted, very handy. So I just got home from college and parked my car on the street. It was about 2300 hours and I was just sitting and browsing my phone. At some point I got into Telegram to read some work related messages when suddenly a guy opens the passenger door and tries to get in. I'm trying to push him out and he's like, shh, you better not, and points to the driver's window where another guy was standing pointing a gun at me. He gets into the car and from the back another guy comes in, so now there's three of them, one on the passenger seat, one by the driver's window which by now opened the door and putting the gun to my head, and another who was sitting in the back and was pointing a knife to my neck. At first I got really confused and I was like, what the fuck, guys? The guy next to me started talking about money I owe them and started searching my car. I told them they are mistaken, and he was like, I saw you browsing Telegram, so don't shit me. At that point from some reason I got really calm, as I do not do drugs and I don't owe nobody money. I tried to explain that I was just reading work messages, but the guy with the gun got really mad and hit me with the gun. He tried to pull me out, and the dude next to me stopped him and said there's an easy way to check, so he took my phone and started going through everything. At some point he got into my messages with my mom, my little sister. He was checking where do I work. He got into the gallery and found pictures of my dog, and that's when I worried the most. He said to his friends, look how cute his dog is, ain't it? You love your dog, do you? And I didn't reply. Few minutes later, and he finds nothing. Then he explains me that they supplied some guy 4k worth of weed and he never paid. Next he says sorry and they're off. TLDR, I was sitting in my car when 3 armed men jumped in thinking I owe them drug money. I wasn't. I have told this story before. Hopefully some people will read this. I woke up one Monday at around 5 AM hearing things falling. I lived in an apartment building in the 2nd floor, and I thought that someone had fallen down the stairs. I heard help please, and reluctantly stood up to see what was up. There was no one in the stairs, but in one apartment the lights were on and the door was open. I went inside, and I saw my neighbor on the floor, and a guy on top of him, with a knife trying to stab him, and my neighbor holding this guy's wrist to stop him. Help me, he came through the window. I just stood there, waiting to see what was really happening, because I literally couldn't believe my eyes, until it hit me, that this was real, this was happening. My first thought was to call the police, but then I realized that they would never get there on time. I had to take the knife, so I went there, and I reached down to the floor, like one does to pick up a coin, trying to grab the knife, and then he hit me. I fell to the floor, and we continued to struggle there. I have no idea how long that lasted. Could have been 10 seconds, or 10 hours. It felt that all my life I had been trying to get that knife, that I had spent years doing that, and nothing else remotely mattered. I don't remember much of the fight. I remember having his shoes on my face. I remember seeing his shoulder. I remember seeing his face. I remember him trying to stab us, but I have no idea in what order anything happened. I just know that at some point, somehow, I did got the knife. I stood up, and the guy turned towards me to take the knife again, but he had his back to my neighbor, and he was able to knock him down and pin him on the floor. Then I called the police, and the rest is bureaucracy. We were arguing, and he started to grab me by the arms and throw me against the wall and to the ground. After maybe the 7th or 8th time of him throwing me, he carried me by my arms to my room and threw me onto the bed. Then, he pinned me down and started choking me. I had tried to get away before it happened, but he grabbed my face and shoved me down. I started to see flashes of black and white. I don't remember how, but I managed to get my feet under him and onto his chest and was able to push him off me. He was my boyfriend at the time. I couldn't believe someone who claimed to love me could do something like that. Now every time I feel even the slightest bit of not being able to breathe, I picture his face. And to make matters worse, he stalked me for like 8 months after I broke up him. He also told me if he would have gone through it, he would have burned my house down me in it. Edit. For everyone asking what happened that led up to this, I found out he was talking to another girl, so I confronted him and told him to go BW her if that's what he wanted. This made him mad. BC I wouldn't fight for him. He started shouting and claiming that I didn't love him. When I pointed out that he was the one who couldn't have possibly loved me, BC he was talking about a future this other girl. He got mad, and that's when he started tossing me around. It really wasn't an attempted murder, more like an attempted murder. I have an autistic brother who I was closer to when we were younger. I went upstairs to his room to use his computer because our other brother broke mine. He quietly left, and I didn't think anything of it. He returned shortly after, and when he opened the door, my grandma stopped him and dragged him down the stairs. Turns out, for a long time my brother had voices telling him to kill me. He didn't want to, but was so tired of hearing the voices, and he was just going to kill me to get the voices to stop. My grandmother had worked with mentally ill patients before, so when he went downstairs to get the pair of scissors, she saw the look in his eye and knew what would happen. He was sent to some fancy hospital for the mentally ill kids in Chicago. He hated it there. I forgave him and all that, but we've never been really close after that, obviously. Edit. Accidentally somehow hit send before I was done. Edit. Also, my brother was diagnosed as schizophrenic after this event. Autism does not cause you to hear voices in your head. Another edit. Oh my goodness. I don't expect this much attention for this story. It's just one of the weird ones I have from over the years. I'm both happy and sad that you know what this is like. Please know this isn't a normal occurrence for mental illness. This was the only incident he ever had, and he really is a sweetheart. Mental illness does crazy things to your head. If you need help, please reach out for help. Hopefully this counts. I live in an extremely rural area. My dad was super abusive. He did a lot of fucked up stuff like stomped my mom's head into a sidewalk when she was 5 months pregnant. Fast forward to when I was 8 years old, he decided to bring the girl he was cheating on my mom with to their house to beat my mom. My mother fled to our only neighbor's house to call the police because he cut the phone lines. He left to take his side chick home, so my mother went to get our important documents. He came back starting beating on mom again and said he was going to kill us for calling the cops, and they show up while he was getting his rifle. They arrested him for domestic violence, and he got a slap on the wrist because my uncle, his brother, worked with police force as a dispatcher and made it all go away. My mom was completely broken down mentally from brainwashing for years and under heavy influence from his family that it was her fault and they should work it out. They ended up sweeping that under the rug and the fact that he raped me from 2Y7Y. Then after all the trauma mom went through, she went psycho and became an abuser for a long period of time until she tried to stab me to death for not washing dishes one night my senior year. I got away and put myself into debt to go to college to escape that. Years later she started to recover from what he did, and I forgave her. I guess the silver lining was that I learned even the sweetest, kindest people can crack under the right circumstances. We may have survived that, but he absolutely destroyed our mental and physical health. Sometimes I wonder if it would have been better to die than to live with the aftermath. It's been hard. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more daily 6 PM Reddit uploads.